Hi everyone, my name's Conor Edgely. I'm the program executive for on the electric vehicle program here in the SEAI, and very happy to be here to give you a bit of an overview of what we do, electric vehicles, and what they can do for you. So in 2022, this is just a little overview of how busy we are and the kind of funding that we're providing. We provided 11,000 grants to people, private individuals, and businesses across 2022. That equated to about 53 million in spend, which is fairly significant. It's one of the larger programs here, and we're here to basically be an implementation piece for the climate action plan, because we've got some significant targets to hit, and electric vehicles are playing a massive role in trying to achieve those targets. So transport in Ireland is a huge emitter. It's actually the fastest growing emitter of greenhouse gases over the last 30 years. So it's increased, I think, about 112% in that time. And now we've been targeted with a 51% reduction in transport emissions based on 2018 figures. The vehicles side of that looks like 840,000 cars is roughly what we're trying to get on the road by 2030, and 95,000 light commercial vehicles. Currently, just for context, there's about 1 million petrol cars on the road and about 1.8 million diesel vehicles on the road. And electric vehicles is about 84,000, just to give you an idea of where we are and just the size of the hill that we're gonna try and climb with this. So electric vehicles come in generally 3 categories. There's the hybrid electric vehicle, which everyone is familiar with, a Toyota Prius. My dad's no interest in cars at all, but he knows what a Toyota Prius is, and it was the original hybrid. It's a petrol engine and a small battery that powers an electric motor that basically helps the car get going, and it'll poodle along at fairly low speeds. These are kind of an old technology now, but they're still readily available to buy even in new cars. But their savings aren't as significant as they appeared back when they were first released, because there was no alternative. After the hybrid electric vehicles came the plug-in hybrids. These are similar again, but 2 changes: significantly larger batteries, and you could plug them directly into your house or a charging station, charge that battery. Now, the batteries aren't very large in comparison to electric vehicles, fully electric vehicles, but they have enough range to travel anything between kind of 30 and 80-ish kilometers on a charge. The only trouble is when they're going on just electric, you're not getting the efficiency you should be getting from an electric motor, because you have to carry around a tank of fuel and you have to carry around your petrol or diesel engine as well. And then if you're running on just diesel, the diesel or petrol engine isn't going to be as efficient either, because you have to carry around the big battery and an electric motor. Well, there was really a space for plug-in hybrids. Their emissions on paper are significantly lower than they are in real life. If you're in a position where you do very small mileage and you don't mind plugging your car in every day or every other day, then they could still be a fit for you, and you could still be massively reducing your emissions. But there's just an awareness piece that needs to be done around the true impact of plug-in hybrids, which is why we no longer support them under the grant scheme, is due to the nature of their emissions. Now we only support zero emission vehicles, which means battery electric vehicles. This is the 3rd category. This is a fully electric vehicle. It has an electric motor and it has a battery, and you plug it in. It doesn't take any other fuel. just to put into context of the difference of the sizes of the batteries, a plug-in hybrid battery is usually around 7, 8 kilowatts, whereas the smallest battery now you'll get on a battery electric vehicle is probably 30, 32 kilowatts, and that goes up to around 77 kilowatts in most passenger cars, is kind of there or thereabouts the limit of where it is. So why should you consider an electric vehicle? For me, I love efficiency, but I'm an engineer. I like to see things work as well as they possibly can, and the efficiency of an electric vehicle is unparalleled. If you consider the petrol or diesel car you might have on your driveway now, for every €100 worth of fuel you put in that car, realistically, only 25 to €30 of that is actually going to making the car move. The rest of that energy is just going to waste, whether it's heat or out the exhaust. It's gone. Whereas an electric vehicle is about 80 to 90% efficient, meaning for every €100 worth of electricity that goes into your car, 80 to 90% of it, 80, €90, is going to actually move the vehicle, which is huge. It's amazing as well, and it'll do all of that while having no emissions coming out the back. And just digging a little bit deeper into the efficiency side of things, this is a poster that you may never have seen before. It's relatively new, but it will be more prominent in the coming months. You'll start to see this appearing in any fuel station around the country. It's going to be something that has to be displayed, and it's demonstrating the difference in cost to travel 100 kilometers. So you've got a petrol there, diesel, very similar, around €10 per 100 kilometers. And you compare that to electric, it's just under €3 for 100 kilometers. And then we've got compressed natural gas and liquefied petroleum gas coming in at just a little bit less as well. Now, this is based on figures which are collected from last year's sales. So it's based on the top 3 sellers from last year in each category or in each fuel, and they're all C segment cars. So that's kind of ID3, Volkswagen Golf, family hatchback size cars. And that's what these figures are based on. And all going well, you'll start to see them appearing in fuel stations around the country. Once we figure out how to communicate it to every fuel station around the country, which is not an easy task, because who has a comprehensive list? If anyone knows, you can send us in a comment. We'd love to find out. Another tool we have on our website, just on the efficiency piece, is our true cost of ownership calculator. If anyone's in the market for an electric vehicle, we do recommend visiting drivingelectric.ie. It's a website, it's a branch of the SEAI website, and you'll find the true cost of ownership calculator on there. On there, you can select your petrol car, in this case a Volkswagen Golf, and you can select other similar cars to compare it to, and it'll give you the total cost of ownership over the course of 10 years. That'll take into account your maintenance cost, your fuel cost, the cost of the car new, tax, and all those things, and it'll break it down for you. But it just goes further to show the difference in cost of running. And maintenance is a big thing as well, because maintenance is significantly less on the electric vehicles compared to combustion engine vehicles. So a little bit more on costs. There's a theme here. I've already touched on the fuel. You can save up to 70%, and I was just starting to discuss the maintenance. On there, you can save up to 60%. Manufacturers will they want to keep people in that loop of servicing their cars every year, but those service costs should be significantly less, because the serviceable parts are significantly less. So Tesla, for example, they don't have set service intervals. They just have checks on certain things at certain times. In an electric vehicle, it has less moving parts, and it's the moving parts that tend to go wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. There's still things that can go wrong with if you hit a pothole too hard, your suspension is still going to take a hammering, and those kind of wear and tear items still exist. But you don't have to change the oil in a petrol engine. You don't have to think about spark plugs, fuel filters, uh, oil filters. There's a whole heap of serviceable items that are just taken out of the equation. And then there's also tolls. A lot of people don't realize that if you drive an electric vehicle, you can save up to 50% on your tolls. Not something you get automatically. It doesn't know when you go through the toll bridge that you're driving an electric vehicle. You have to have one of those little tags that goes in your front window. Once you get those tags, you tell your service provider that, hey, I'm driving an electric vehicle, and then they'll make sure you're on the right tariff. And you can save, I think it's up to 50% on certain roads. And of course, electric vehicles have the lowest road tax on the road. And then there's the environment side of things. There's no tailpipe emissions from a battery electric vehicle. It's not got a tailpipe. So as you cruise down the road in your nice, smooth electric vehicle, you're not producing any emissions coming out the back, which is good for everyone. There is an argument to be made that electric vehicles are more pollutant to produce, and this is true. But in most cases, after 2 years of that car running, it's already offset that difference. And that 2 years is likely to reduce in the coming years as we have more renewable energy coming on form, because the time it takes to offset that is all very dependent on where your source of fuel is coming from. But even in countries where their power is all driven from coal, it's still significantly better to be driving an electric vehicle for the environment than an ICE vehicle where petrol or diesel, for example. Another environmental benefit is no particulate matter coming out of the exhaust. You do still have particulate matter coming from brakes, which not a lot of people are aware of. Particulate matter from brakes is another really nasty item that gets put out into our environment. But even that's reduced on an electric vehicle, because electric vehicles like to regenerate energy when they're slowing down. So when you take your foot off the accelerator, sometimes before you even press the brake, the car is regenerating. The motor's working to slow those wheels down for you. And as it's doing that, it's generating electricity, which is going back into the battery. So as you're going down the motorway on a massive hill, and your cruise control is keeping you at 100 kilometers per hour, 120 kilometers per hour, you'll be generating electricity the whole time at that, despite traveling at that speed. Another benefit is reduced noise pollution. It's a much nicer environment to not have the clatter of diesel engines. I'm a petrol head. I do like the sound of some petrol cars. You pass me with a Ferrari with a big V10 in it, that's going to ring my bell. But that doesn't happen every day. For the vast majority of traffic noise pollution, it's just an awful din that we could do without. And I think once it's gone, we'll wonder what we ever thought before, having our streets filled with these. Another massive advantage is comfort and space that electric vehicles provide. Because there's so much less to go into an electric vehicle in terms of drivetrain. The interiors can be designed in an entirely different way. In the back of the car, for example, the way you never want to be the one sitting in the middle seat, sat in the middle with your knees up here because of that hump. A lot of electric vehicles have completely gotten rid of that, because there's no need for a transmission tunnel, which means you can have a completely flat floor. So the middle seat's not such a bad place anymore. There's space to be had in the cabin too, because on a traditional petrol or diesel hatchback, it's a front-wheel drive car, and the engine's at the front, and the wheels have to be at a certain point. Whereas when you take that out of the equation, you can push the wheels further forward. So the wheels are closer to the front than the back bumpers, which then gives much more space inside the cabin. And the middle as well, in the front, it can be much more open. There's much more options for storage, and just generally you get a much airier feel inside them. It depends on the design and the style that each manufacturer goes for. But on the whole, for those electric vehicles that are designed from the ground up, it's a much nicer place to be. There are some electric vehicles that are slightly compromised because they started life as a petrol or a diesel car and were converted by manufacturers to also have an electric vehicle version. They don't tend to enjoy the same kind of space and design advantages. So that's something to consider if you are looking at electric cars yourself. You might be wondering why there's a picture of a boot sitting in the front seat of this Tesla. And one of the things that I love about electric vehicles is how quiet and smooth they are, and how much less vibration is transmitted to the occupants inside the cabin. And studies have shown that dogs are far less anxious on trips in electric vehicles. And obviously, they couldn't be surveyed afterwards to know exactly why that was. But the thought behind it is that the lack of noise and the reduction in that vibration means they just feel a bit more comfortable and less threatened, because their ears are much more sensitive than ours. Now, if you're considering an electric vehicle, what are the supports that are in place for you that we could help you to achieve that? Well, at the moment, the SEAI will provide €5,000 towards the purchase of an electric vehicle. That's less than €60,000. That grant is due to end at the end of June. So what that means is any applications for a grant that go in up until the end of June will qualify for that €5,000 grant. So you don't have to have your car by the end of June. You just need to have applied for your grant. And that's not something you can do. That's something your garage does on your behalf. So if you've made a commitment to a car and you're starting to sweat thinking, oh no, it's not going to arrive in time, you will have time. Once a grant has been approved, you've got 4 months then to register and tax that vehicle for the grant to be paid out. After June, the grant is going to be brought down to €3,500, and that is going to be there for the foreseeable as we see it for now, until we receive instructions otherwise. If you're looking at commercial vehicles, there's 2 grant options available. For medium-sized vans and small-sized vans, the €3,800. The €60,000 limit applies to that too. So anything above €60,000 does not qualify for the grant, except for the next one, large panel vans. These things are big and these things are expensive. If you're in the market for one of those, we'll give you €7,600 towards one of those, and those are capped at €90,000. Now, the main criteria that qualifies for the €7,600 grant is it needs to be a 3.5 ton van. That's 3.5 ton technically permissible laden weight. All right. And then there's VRT relief too of up to €5,000 on vehicles less than €40,000 retail price. And then for anyone who's thinking about an EV as a company car, there are benefit in kind benefits too. At the moment, it's €45,000, and that's going to drop to €20,000 and then €10,000 year on year. And then it's going to be phased out completely, or that's the plan at the moment anyway. Just a couple of things to consider. If there are any business customers out there, there's also accelerated capital allowances where you can claim $24,000 in the first year. And again, just a reminder of the lower tax, the lower maintenance. Anyone running a fleet of vehicles in particular will see a massive impact when it comes to the maintenance cost, because it's not just the servicing that's less, but because of the regenerative braking, for example, you don't replace brake pads or brake discs as often. There's reports of taxi drivers having them last 2, 3, even 4 times longer than they had previously, just because of the power of the regenerative braking. And that's great news, not just for your pockets, but for all of our lungs, because the particulates that come off brakes are really nasty stuff. And yeah, our lungs will all be the better for it. Kind of touched on this earlier. There's 50% discount on motorways for battery electric vehicles. That is extended to plug-in hybrids at the moment, but I believe that is going to be phased out soon. So if you do have a PHEV, now's the time to take advantage of that, because it's not going to be there for long. And there's €600 available for home chargers too. And you don't have to have an electric vehicle now to take advantage of the home charger grant. If you're thinking about getting an EV in the future, now might be the time to do it. There's €600 for every MPRN number. So it's not exclusive to the person. So if you've got more than one home, or if you've got a business, that's also going to qualify for that €600 grant. So it's available to anyone, whether you've got an EV or not. Charging infrastructure. This is one of people's big barriers. When we talk about barriers, there's the cost of the vehicle, there's charging infrastructure, they're generally, and battery concerns. They're the 3 big ones. So let's talk about charging infrastructure. We're very fortunate in Ireland. 80% of homes in Ireland have off-street parking. So for the majority of us who are lucky to have a driveway, the infrastructure piece shouldn't be as important, because the majority of your driving will be done charging at home. And that's how you should be charging it if you have the luxury of having a driveway, because it'll be a much more affordable way of paying for fuel, for your electricity. If you can take advantage of a night rate, that's even better. If you have solar panels, even better, because you can have your certain chargers. Make sure you do your research on your charger to match it with your solar panels, that it has the capability to tell what's coming from your solar, what your house is using, and then just send any excess to your vehicle. And I've recently had one put in, and with my mileage from this time of year till probably September, most of my driving needs are going to be done, or are going to be, my energy requirements for the car are going to be satisfied by the solar on the house. We work from home. We haven't got a huge amount of panels. We've got 7 panels, and it's going to just trickle charge the car while we work during the day, and that'll be enough for us spinning around our small mileage that we do during the week. For those who don't have the luxury of a driveway to charge your car, there's a huge amount of infrastructure out there now. There's over 2,000 public chargers that are available to use. There's no consistency for one app yet, but some progress has been made on that front. From now on, any new chargers that go in have to be tap to pay. So you won't have to have the app to use the charger. You'll be able to just use your credit debit phone and just pull up, plug in, tap, and go. For anything that's in place at the minute, the charge point operators have until January 2027 to retrofit them with tap to pay, therefore making all that infrastructure much more accessible to everyone. Because the app thing was a bit of a barrier, it was a bit of a faff. because some apps would work with most stuff, but inevitably the one you pull up at will be a different app. And that was a complaint that a lot of people were making. So this is a great solution that we're all really happy to see being implemented. There's also Zevi have committed 100 million euro to increasing the public charging infrastructure. And the first initiative that they've launched is for sports clubs. The initiative is to put charging infrastructure into sports clubs around the country that have car parks that are publicly accessible to the public. The idea is they're generally in communities, and that should add about another 1,800 chargers to the already swelling infrastructure. On top of that, there's going to be other destination chargers coming down the line very shortly as well that'll target hotels, gyms, and particularly tourist destinations is an area of interest too. So do watch this space for that. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people talk, you hear a lot of negativity in the media about the charging infrastructure. Next time you're at a motorway services, maybe just have a glance, have a look yourself, see if one of the chargers are free. Might just give you a bit of insight as if I was here with my EV, would I have to wait? Is it available? Or what I did anyway before, in the run up to getting an EV, and yeah, it's kind of made me feel a bit better about it. Now, if I've sold you the dream and you're about to rush out the door and buy an EV, what should you be thinking about first? It needs to be suitable for your needs. That's a key thing that I really hope people put a bit of thought. Forgive me. I was just about to say you put a bit of thought into the second biggest purchase you'll ever make in your life. Of course, you're going to put a bit of thought into it. I'd want you to think about it in terms of the driving that you're actually doing. Look at your own car. Think about how long you've had it and the mileage you've covered, and then break that down. Working backwards from that, you'll get a real impression of the actual driving that you do, and from there you can work out the range of the car that you need. People are forever overestimating the amount of mileage that they'll do. We see it all the time, and you can absolutely forgive people for doing that, because we're all just trying to get to where we want to go, because there's that range anxiety, and by having a bigger battery you won't be as anxious and you'll get there. The range anxiety thing, it does fade, because once you have the battery and you're going home at night, you're going to get there. You've got, for 99% of your journeys, you're probably going to go home at night, unless you're doing massive miles every day. And by massive miles, I mean massive miles. I know plenty of people who do between 50 and 60,000 kilometers a year in their EVs with little or no interaction with the public charging network. So it's very feasible to do significant miles and just plug in and charge at home, if you're lucky enough to be in a position to do that. And I forgot to mention there's an apartment charger grant that's been launched too. Sorry, I should have mentioned that on the last slide. There's a grant open for apartment chargers, or not necessarily apartments, but shared dwellings, where there might be houses, apartments, duplexes, and they've got shared spaces. So if you're in one of those areas and you're interested in getting some chargers in, my contact details are on the end of this, so you can always reach out and I can let you know a little bit more about that. But anyway, understand your driving needs, figure out how many kilometers you do a year, and then work your way back from that. Because if you buy an electric vehicle that's got a big battery in it, you're just hauling that battery around with you all the time. If you have a full tank of fuel, you're going to be less efficient because you're carrying a full tank of fuel. As that goes down, you get a bit more efficient. So if you're only putting a quarter tank in, that's fine. But a battery, it weighs the same all the time. So it doesn't make sense to drive around all year in a car that's going to do 600 kilometers in one go if you do like minuscule amount of driving or even moderate amount of driving. There's so few cases where you're going to be maximizing that range or justifying the inefficiency of having that. So I'd recommend that you really put a lot of thought into the battery that you need and the range that you need. And that's why I have the picture of the MG and the Tesla there, because the MG is kind of an entry level model that has a slightly smaller battery, and then the Tesla is an example of one of the longer ranges. I think the Tesla can do over 600 kilometers now in its longest range, whereas the MG, it starts at I think about 300 kilometers, but can go up to 450 kilometers depending on the battery size. But not just the vehicle you want to look at; it's the battery themselves too. And if you want more information on electric vehicles, drivingelectric.ie is a fantastic resource. It's got webinars, it's got the true cost of ownership calculator, it's got details about our commercial fleet trial, where we've given 200 businesses the use of an electric vehicle for 3 months to see how they got on. So there's some information on that there and other initiatives, and just a lot of information. Some information about buying a used electric vehicle too, if that's something that you're looking at. It's an excellent resource. Finally, I'd say test drive the vehicles. There's not a garage out there that wouldn't be happy to take you out on a test drive. Granted, they will be doing it with the thought in mind that they'll might sell you a car at the end of it, but there's no obligation to buy a car. And because there's the chance that you'll buy a car, they'll be more than happy to take you out for a drive, whether it happens today, tomorrow, or 2 years down the line. Test drive them. Test drive a few. They are gorgeous to drive, but they're all a bit different. So it's worth driving a few and getting a feel for them yourselves, because I can tell you how comfortable a mattress is, and you can look at it, but you won't know until you actually lie down on it and realize that it is lovely. And that's how you'll feel, particularly when you get out of it and then you get back into your petrol or diesel car and start the engine and drive down the road. You feel like your teeth are being rattled out because you're just not aware of the vibration that comes through the car till you've driven something without. And I think if we could take one piece of advice away from me today, it says get out there, drive some vehicles, and see what you think for yourselves. And that's me. I hope you found some of this informative, and if you have any questions at all, you're more than welcome to post them. I'd be happy to go through some. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Conor.